Kevin James suffers prejudice on set. Adam Sandler gives the most inspiring response of his career. The bright California sun cast long shadows over the Warner Studios lot. As Kevin James stepped out of his trailer, a gentle breeze swept across the asphalt, carrying with it the distant hum of film crews preparing for another busy day. He adjusted the brim of his baseball cap and smiled at the familiar chaos. Rigging being hoisted, assistants running with clipboards, the steady clatter of camera equipment. It was the world he loved, but something had shifted. The set of The Big Move, a high-budget comedy featuring a stellar ensemble, had welcomed Kevin initially with the usual fanfare. Yet, over the past week, small slights had begun to accumulate. Whispered conversations abruptly stopping when he walked by. Subtle eye rolls from the director during rehearsals and the unexplained reduction of his scenes. At first, Kevin had brushed it off. Maybe I'm imagining it. Maybe it's just the pressure of a big production, he thought, but the feeling was undeniable. The camaraderie that once defined his film experiences had been replaced with cold professionalism. Today was no exception. As Kevin approached the craft services table, the production assistant, a young man named Blake, shifted awkwardly. "Morning, Blake," Kevin greeted with his trademark warmth. Blake offered a tight nod without meeting his eyes. "Director wants to see you after your scene." Kevin's stomach tightened. It wasn't a good sign. He took a coffee, thanked Blake, and walked back toward the soundstage. Inside, the energy felt tense. The director, Sean Harrow, a rising star, in his late 30s, known for his edgy style and no-nonsense attitude, stood with arms crossed, frowning at a monitor. The scene had been meticulously blocked, but Sean shook his head. "Cut!" Sean barked. "Kevin, can I speak with you privately?" The cast and crew exchanged glances as Kevin followed Sean to a corner of the set. "Kevin, you're not fitting the tone," Sean began bluntly. "You're too old school. The network wants fresh energy. We might be scaling back your role, just giving you a heads up." Kevin stared, stunned. Too old school. Was that a euphemism for too heavy, too ordinary, not Hollywood enough? Years of dedication and loyalty seemed to evaporate in that moment. "I understand," Kevin managed to say quietly, maintaining his composure. He walked back to his trailer in a daze. Inside, he sank onto the couch and stared blankly at the script in his hands. The words blurred. Doubt crept in. Had he become irrelevant? Was he being quietly pushed aside? A soft knock interrupted his spiral of thoughts. "Yeah?" The door opened, and Adam Sandler stepped in. Dressed casually in basketball shorts and an oversized hoodie, Adam's presence was grounding, his brow furrowed as he took in Kevin's expression. "Kev, talk to me." Kevin hesitated. They had shared years of laughs and success, but this was different. Still, if there was one person he could trust, it was Adam. Kevin sighed. "They're cutting me out, man. Said I'm not the right tone. I'm feeling it everywhere on set." Adam sat beside him and shook his head slowly. "This industry's got a short memory. They forget who helped build it. You deserve respect." Kevin shrugged. "Not feeling much of that right now." Adam's eyes hardened with resolve. "Then we remind them." The next day, Adam showed up early on set. He approached Sean directly, in full view of the cast and crew. The conversation was private, but the body language was clear. Adam stood tall, his gestures firm, his voice unwavering. Later that afternoon, Adam posted an open message on his social media. "I've worked with Kevin James for over 2 decades. He is one of the most talented, hard-working, and genuine people I've ever met. There's no room for disrespect or prejudice on any set I'm part of. I stand with my friend." The post went viral within hours. Fellow actors, comedians, and industry veterans rallied behind Kevin, flooding the feed with messages of support. Inside his trailer, Kevin watched the notifications stream in, emotions welling in his chest. The quiet pain of the previous days gave way to something stronger: gratitude, solidarity, and an unshakable reminder of the power of true friendship. As Adam walked in later that evening with 2 ice-cold sodas, Kevin stood and gave him a firm hug. "Thank you, man," Adam smiled. "We're just getting started." The early morning fog drifted over the studio lot like a soft veil, masking the usual frenzy with an eerie calm. But underneath the silence, a storm was brewing. Overnight, Adam Sandler's post had ignited conversations that couldn't be silenced. By the time Kevin James walked onto the set the next day, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Gone were the averted gazes and cold shoulders. A quiet respect lingered now, mingled with uncertainty. Kevin, always humble, nodded and smiled as crew members cautiously approached him with pats on the back or whispered words of support. "We got your back, Kev." Inside the executive offices, the studio heads scrambled to control the narrative. Emails, calls, and crisis meetings became the order of the day. Sean Harrow was summoned to a tense sit-down with producers and public relations advisors. "You've lit a fire under a hornet's nest," producer Carla Mendoza scolded, her eyes sharp behind designer glasses. "Sandler has the public on his side, and the network can't afford a scandal right now." Sean clenched his jaw but nodded. He had underestimated the depth of the friendship between the 2 actors and the loyalty of their fan base. Meanwhile, Adam continued to lead by quiet example. He walked onto the set with Kevin at his side, ensuring that the message was clear. Any attempt to marginalize Kevin would not be tolerated. During breaks, Adam and Kevin returned to their familiar rhythm, rehearsing lines and swapping jokes like they had for years. It wasn't an act for the cameras, it was genuine brotherhood, but despite the groundswell of support, Kevin wrestled with his emotions. One afternoon, he found himself alone in a secluded corner of the backlot, gazing out at the sprawling studio skyline. Footsteps approached, soft but deliberate. "Mind if I join you?" Carla Mendoza asked gently. Kevin nodded, appreciating her. "Sincerity, I wanted to say I'm sorry for what you've been through," Carla began. "This shouldn't have happened. You've earned your place here." Kevin smiled faintly. "I've been in this business long enough to know that nothing is guaranteed." Carla studied him for a moment. "True, but respect should be." She handed him a revised script. "We're restoring your full role. You and Adam built this film's heart. We can't lose that." Kevin felt a wave of relief mixed with cautious optimism. "Thank you." As word spread that Kevin's scenes were reinstated, the crew's mood lightened. That night, Adam invited a small group to a local diner, one of their old traditions from their early days hustling in comedy clubs. The group, consisting of cast members, stuntmen, assistants, and a few trusted friends, shared greasy burgers and endless stories under the dim yellow lights of the retro booth. At one point, Kevin raised his glass to friendship that doesn't bend under pressure. Adam smiled and added, "And to never letting anyone tell you you're not enough." The table erupted in cheers. As they laughed late into the night, Kevin realized something important. The road ahead would still have challenges, but he wasn't walking it alone. The shadows of prejudice and exclusion had been pushed back, not by shouting, but by unwavering loyalty and quiet courage. The next day, when Kevin stepped onto the set for the big ensemble scene, the applause that greeted him wasn't scripted. It was real. The cast and crew stood together, silently acknowledging the strength of character it had taken for him to stay true to himself. As the cameras rolled and Kevin delivered his lines with the familiar warmth and timing that had made him a star, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The spotlight was back where it belonged, but now it shone a little brighter, casting light not just on him, but on the values he and Adam stood for. The following week felt surreal to Kevin James. Every entertainment outlet had picked up the story. Headlines ranged from Adam Sandler defends longtime friend Kevin James in Hollywood standoff to A Lesson in Loyalty, how two comedians changed the narrative on set ethics. Paparazzi camped outside the studio gates, and interview requests flooded both Adam and Kevin's representatives. For the first time in years, Kevin became the center of an industry-wide discussion, not for his comedic timing, but for what he represented: resilience, respect, and quiet dignity. Kevin wasn't entirely comfortable with the spotlight in this way. "I'm not the poster boy for anything," he told Adam one morning as they sipped coffee in their trailers. Adam chuckled. "You didn't ask for it, buddy, but sometimes the right person gets caught in the right moment." Despite the media, Storm, production on The Big Move, resumed with a surprising sense of calm and even unity. Crew members and actors approached Kevin with personal stories of feeling dismissed or marginalized in their own careers. The conversation had started, and it was spreading. Meanwhile, Kevin found himself invited to panels and private discussions within the industry. A special moment came when the Screen Actors Guild Foundation requested Kevin and Adam to speak at a closed-door meeting about workplace respect and equality. The room was packed with actors, directors, and producers. Some came to show support, others came to listen and learn. As Kevin took the stage, he paused to absorb the weight of the moment. "I didn't come here to be an example," Kevin began, his voice calm but firm. "I came to work like everyone else, but when you're made to feel invisible, you either shrink or stand tall. I had a friend who made sure I stood tall." He turned slightly to Adam, who nodded solemnly. The audience responded with thunderous applause. Afterward, several young actors and actresses approached Kevin privately, expressing how much his experience mirrored their own silent struggles. His heart swelled with empathy and determination. Back on set, the dynamic between Kevin and Sean Harrow remained professional but distant. Sean had not apologized directly, but his approach had noticeably changed. Directions were more collaborative. The sarcasm had vanished. One afternoon, during a break in shooting, Sean approached Kevin at the craft services table. "Hey, Kevin," Sean said awkwardly. "Look, this whole thing, it taught me a lot. I was wrong to treat you the way I did. You deserve better." Kevin studied Sean for a moment and then extended his hand. "Thank you. That means a lot," Kevin replied sincerely. "Let's just focus on making a great film." As they shook hands, Adam, watching from a distance, smiled in quiet approval. The final scenes of The Big Move were shot under an atmosphere of collaboration and mutual respect. Kevin's role, once minimized, now held emotional depth and comedic brilliance. His performance was electric, funny, heartfelt, and authentic. The wrap party was a celebration like no other. Adam raised a glass in a private toast to Kevin among close friends and collaborators, to the guy who reminded all of us what it means to stay true. Kevin laughed, slightly embarrassed, but deeply grateful. The journey was far from over. There were still stereotypes to break, mindsets to change, and barriers to overcome. But as Kevin stood under the warm glow of the party lights, surrounded by people who had stood with him, he knew they had taken a first, meaningful step. The film was complete. The industry had taken notice, and Kevin James, forever humble, walked away with something even greater than renewed fame, the respect he had always deserved. The night of The Big Move premiere arrived with the kind of anticipation usually reserved for blockbuster franchises. The film had become more than just a comedy. It was now a symbol of standing up against quiet discrimination and for the enduring power of friendship. The red carpet outside Grauman's Chinese Theatre on Hollywood Boulevard was ablaze with camera flashes. Reporters called out names, fans, pressed against barricades, and publicists scurried to manage the chaos. Kevin James stepped from the sleek black SUV, dressed in a classic tuxedo, his wife Steffiana by his side. As he stood there for a moment, taking in the surreal scene, he felt a surge of pride, not for the fame, but for the journey it had taken to reach this point. Then Adam Sandler emerged from a second car, his easygoing charm breaking the tension. As he waved enthusiastically to the crowd, the two friends embraced on the carpet, their bond now legendary in Hollywood circles. Interviews followed quickly. Kevin was prepared for the usual film questions, but most reporters focused on the real-life story that had unfolded behind the scenes. How does it feel to have sparked an industry conversation? One asked. Kevin smiled thoughtfully. I didn't spark anything. I just had a friend who stood up for me and an industry that decided to listen. Inside the packed theater, the audience settled into velvet seats as the opening credits rolled. The film delivered laughs and heartfelt moments in equal measure, but what struck viewers most was Kevin's performance. His role, once on the verge of being diminished, became the emotional anchor of the movie. The final scene drew audible sighs and spontaneous applause. As the credits began to scroll, the audience rose in a standing ovation. Kevin sat motionless for a moment, stunned by the outpouring of love. Adam nudged him gently. Come on, Kev, you earned this. The post-premiere party was a blur of congratulations. Studio executives, once silent during the controversy, now openly praised Kevin's performance and the integrity he had shown. But one unexpected moment came when a veteran actor, Thomas Reed, approached Kevin quietly. I've been around a long time, kid, Thomas said, his voice raspy but warm. I've seen how this business treats people who don't fit the mold. What you did gave a lot of us hope that maybe things can change. Kevin, usually quick with a quip, was speechless. He simply nodded and shook Thomas's hand firmly. In the weeks following the premiere, The Big Move became both a box office success and a critical darling. Reviewers praised its humor and heart, but almost every article highlighted the off-screen story as a defining cultural moment. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences announced that Kevin and Adam would receive a special humanitarian award at the next Oscars for their advocacy of respect and equity in film production. Sitting in his home a few nights later, Kevin reflected quietly. He looked around at his family, at the mementos from years in comedy clubs and movie sets, and at the framed newspaper clipping of Adam's post that had started it all. It hadn't been an easy path. There had been self-doubt, humiliation, anger, and fear, but there had also been friendship, courage, and an unshakable belief that human dignity was non-negotiable. As Kevin sipped his coffee, his phone buzzed. A text from Adam. You ready for the next one, buddy? Kevin smiled wide. The work wasn't done and the journey would continue, always. The evening of the Academy Awards arrived, and for the first time in years, Kevin James felt something he hadn't expected. Peace. Dressed in a sharp black tuxedo, he stood beside Adam Sandler on the iconic red carpet of the Dolby Theatre. The flashes of cameras were intense, but the noise of Hollywood's biggest night felt distant, almost surreal. Hard to believe we're here for this, huh? Adam whispered as they walked past towering Oscar statues. Kevin chuckled. I thought, if I ever made it to the Oscars, it'd be for best falling down a flight of stairs. Adam laughed, tension breaking between them. The night wasn't about personal achievement, it was about what they had endured and what they had changed. As they took their seats inside the majestic theater, Kevin spotted familiar faces, actors who had messaged him privately during the controversy, industry leaders who had since pledged to create fairer working environments, and even Sean Harrow, sitting quietly 2 rows back. The host, a celebrated comedian, joked warmly about the events. that had brought Kevin and Adam to this stage. Tonight we honor two guys who proved that sometimes the best punchline is decency. The applause was genuine, echoing throughout the vast room. When the time came, Kevin and Adam were called to the stage to accept the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award. As they approached the podium, the crowd rose to its feet. Adam spoke first. "We didn't plan this. We didn't want headlines or controversy. I just stood up for my friend, like he would have done for me. That's what friendship is. That's what respect looks like." Kevin's turn came. He took a deep breath and looked out over the sea of faces. "This isn't just for me," he began, voice steady but full of emotion. "This is for every person on a film set, in any job, who's ever been made to feel small or unworthy. You deserve to be seen, to be heard, and to be treated with dignity." The theater erupted into applause again, longer this time, fuller. It was a release, a collective acknowledgement of a truth too often ignored. After the ceremony, back at the after-party, Kevin and Adam were approached by young filmmakers and actors seeking advice, wanting to be part of the cultural shift they had inspired. Kevin was patient, kind, and humble. "Be excellent at your craft," he told them, "but never forget to be excellent to the people around you too." Months turned into years. The big move inspired a wave of discussions about inclusion and respect on film sets across the country. Studios established clearer codes of conduct, mentorship programs were launched, and casting became more inclusive, not just in appearance, but in attitude. Kevin continued to work, but now he also served as an informal mentor to young actors, struggling to find their place. Adam remained by his side, both on screen and off, their bond as strong as ever. In an interview years later, a young reporter asked Kevin what he considered his greatest achievement. "Not the movies," Kevin said, shaking his head with a soft smile. "The movies will fade. What lasts is how you treat people. That's your real legacy." The sun set over Los Angeles, casting a golden glow over the skyline. As Kevin stood by a studio window watching crews packing up after another long shoot, he smiled softly. The spotlight had moved on, as it always does, but something had shifted permanently in its wake, because in the end, it wasn't about fame. It was about respect.